we can a little bit focus on the Euros. I think everything that needs to be said about what happened in the aftermath of the Euros has been said. We don't have a uniquely different take to anybody else's take out there. There's been thousands. Clearly, we are in support of the 3 young men who went up there and missed their penalties. Clearly, we are not in support of the racist abuse that they received all across social media. But ultimately, there's nothing new for us to say. It was a horrible situation, which we kind of probably all saw coming. What I will say, there was an episode that we did probably 5 or 6 ago where I was asked by, I think it was Johnny, like, who would I play for? You know, if I was a footballer and I got big, international level, and I had the choice between England and Nigeria. And if you listen back to that episode, you could see me almost umming and ahhing because I wasn't really sure where I stood on it, who I aligned with, who I felt in solidarity with the most with regards to my background and my upbringing. If you need any insight as to why people like myself feel this way, ladies and gentlemen, after the Euros, you had a very, very clear example. There is a very uniquely weird thing about being black, full stop. But when you are black and you are born into a country which is predominantly white, one that colonized your mother and your father's home country, part of the reason why you are here and they came here, you are never really made to feel ever as though you are really part of the fabric. And that's something that I thought when I was a kid, when we experienced racism for the first time, would get better as I got older. The reality is that this isn't something that's improving. It's something that is fairly cyclical, and that sometimes it comes to you in the most pure, thick, raw, obvious way. And then it kind of disappears and it goes back to being some of the more subliminal, intangible means of racism. But now we're in an era, unfortunately, where at every single level of society, whether it be the playground, whether it be the government offices, we have this and it is rife. And it's suffocating, it's upsetting, but ultimately this is why so many people struggle. Even when they get sucked into the romance of a tournament like the Euros where we got to the final, they struggle to really feel a part of it. And then when things go wrong, we are reminded why we were never a part of it in the first place. That's all I want to fucking say on this thing. This shit is going to continue. Every single time a black player makes a mistake in any game, in any sport, you're going to see this. All I have to say to my black people out there is just stay strong, because it's just going to be what it's going to be. We just have to do better.
Shout out also to brother Yemi, who wrote his thing for complex.com.
My boy and my brother, my actual brother, Yemi, who is a journalist. He did an article on this for Complex. Me and him, we're brothers. We have conversations. Me and my two brothers. We have conversations like this all of the time. And he's 6 years younger than me, but he feels the same. It's a very, very uniquely common experience for all of us. Like, it is what it is. Is it the social media companies? I think if you were on social media that day, you would have seen a very vocal me. You would have seen a very vocal Johnny going on about where we think the changes should be made. I think that social media companies have a part to play. Johnny somewhat agrees, but he thinks it's a much wider issue, and I agree with that as well. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? We need a holistic approach. If we have social media companies policing it a little bit better, that doesn't eradicate racism. And furthermore, if we've got Boris Johnson perpetuating these fuckeries, then social media company policing doesn't really achieve much at all. So I get your point, but they still need to do something.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously could do something because it's so evident. You type the word COVID and your posts get pulled down. Now you get all kinds of... You try and hashtag anything, and there's literally what they're designed for capturing metadata. Like, just what this text is. So it's very obvious they could do something. For me, the point is that by the time people are posting shit on social media for it to be filtered, it's already too late on a societal level. So they could do something to filter it, but the problem already exists behind the keyboard, right? So... recently, Michael Holding's written a book. If you don't know who Michael Holding is and you're West Indian, firstly, chat to yourself, but also go and ask your parents if they're actually from the West Indies, or your grandparents, And they'll tell you who Michael Holding is. He was basically the world's leading cricketer during the 70s and the 80s. And he tells a story where he met Tony Greig, who was the England captain. And he was discussing in the context of racism that after meeting Tony Greig and seeing him a few times, he realized that Tony Greig himself wasn't a racist. But he lived in a society and lived in a country where it was inevitable that someone would grow up and develop the belief system that Tony Greig eventually did. And through becoming friends with Tony Greig, Michael Holding kind of made him relearn his behavior, change his ways, and develop this new understanding, and then was no longer a racist, or learned the things that he was saying and doing were racist. So the point that I make, and the point that I tried to make, and Rich and I had a chat about it, was that, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, you can filter for posts, and that might help. But the point is that society needs to be deconstructed, and society needs to address the root causes of why people end up as racists. Facts. Why are people posting shit that needs to then be filtered? Facts. That's the wider issue. That's kind of where our disagreement on this topic comes.
100%.
And when you have a media landscape that's dominated by people like Nigel Farage moving into GB News, the politicization of news, the
monetization of black pain.
There's that. You can get into that if you like. But where the government is passing laws to demonize journalists on the scale of Nigel Farage and Edward Snowden, but also threatening to introduce laws that would put journalists in jail just for embarrassing the government.
We're getting onto that.
Just for embarrassing the government. When you have a government that seems hell-bent on leading a war on woke, on culture wars, and attacking cultural institutions that demeans the value of education in this country, when universities and colleges are attacked as being political institutions, and when you have a society that or a government that propagandizes a culture where where national pride is mixed with xenophobia, it's inevitable that people are going to grow up in a society and an apparatus that it becomes acceptable to attack people who don't look like them.
Speak to your white people, bruv.
And that's the problem. Social media companies could filter, but
speak to your white people, bruv.
But
I'm holding you further. We're holding Johnny accountable for all of white people fuckery going forward. All of it. Every single time white people fuck up, I'm going to come to Johnny and be like, why? Why have they done this week, buddy? Yeah. Explain it. Explain me.
I wouldn't blame Johnny.
You're just going to blame him?
I wouldn't hold Johnny accountable.
Why?
Yeah. For something like this, yeah.
I'm joking, by the
way.
But kind of not.
Yeah, kind of not, though. Like, as a representation, as a figurehead.
That's fine, because I do blame you, man, for Saka missing the penalty.
Exactly.
So.
Fair.
Exactly. Something like this, though, I think after a certain number of years of like trying to solve the issue in various forms, whether it's like whatever, kick it out of football or like just generally, I think it comes a point where people have to stop asking for stuff, right? So you have to stop asking and you have to start taking stuff, basically. And I think the lack of organization within the community is doing it a disservice, basically, right? So at the beginning of lockdown, two Asian Americans get slapped up on road because of the similar discriminatory, ill-conceived ideas that, oh yeah, these men are the ones who are to blame for COVID or whatever. And 3-4 months in, there are various anti-Asian discriminatory laws that get passed, right?
Yeah.
Similar with the Jewish community. Yeah, some bread drives around in a car, like during whatever. We covered the story, right?
Yeah, Israel-Palestine.
On Edgware Road or some shit, and he had his speakers loud, and he was saying some anti-Semitic phrases and whatever. I can't remember what the fuck he said, but it was nothing good. And that gets, obviously, not only national attention, but, you know, there's legal ramifications. Well, the guy was arrested, basically. Him and his 3-car envoy were arrested, charged with various hate speech, legislative, crimes, basically, right? So I think I don't blame Johnny. I wouldn't hold Johnny accountable or general white people accountable for this.
Do you blame us?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think there's a lack of organization. Like, there comes a point where you have to stop asking for shit. Like, oh yeah, Facebook do a better job at policing the algorithm. Oh yeah, no. At some point, people have to organize, and whether. So the Palestinians are a good example of this. Yeah, where I guess they're smaller in number or whatever, but they're up against a power greater than themselves, right? So they may try boycott or this, like various types of media related initiatives or whatever. The point is, I think it all comes back down to like unity within a given community, and then utilizing that unity to get the change that you're looking for, basically, right? So whether that, and I'm not talking about little cancel this and cancel that. Oh, some comedian was, on stage and said the N-word. Yeah, let's cancel him. Yeah, cool, we can cancel him. But I'm talking about on a more institutional level.
Yeah, but and I know you meant that. I knew that's where you were going, right? Like, I guess your frustration or your solution, more to the point, involves a greater deal of influence and power, which our community as a whole right now collectively doesn't have yet.
Well,
right? We are still infants. Right? In terms of our journey here, we're still in our infancy, right? Like generations like my generation, the generations that come after ours, are the ones that are really going to understand and benefit from the fruits of generational wealth and understand the power in community thought, community monetary pooling, etc., etc. Our parents and our parents' parents, Windrush generation and so on and so forth, didn't have those powers from day one, were never given those powers. There are people from the Windrush generation who are still getting kicked out today. So yes, you can say in an idealistic situation that if we gathered our thoughts, gathered our money, gathered our intelligence together, we would be able to boycott, or we'd be able to do the capitalistic play of we're going to withdraw our money from your businesses, from your initiatives and so on and so forth until you take us seriously. But the reality is we're still not strategically set yet, and that's not our fault.
I think that is our fault. So you're always going to be trying to, in any kind of scenario like this, you're always going to be trying to push a ball uphill, right? Like whenever you're trying to cause any kind of systematic change, the people who are benefiting from the way things are now are going to push back against that, right? So it's normal that it's not going to be easy for you to achieve the change that you're trying to achieve. But
let's take America for example.
Just to counter the point you made earlier, I think we talked about Stephen Lawrence a few episodes back, right? When we came across Stephen Lawrence Memorial Day. And his mum, Doreen Lawrence, I think is her name. Baroness Doreen Lawrence. She is a good example of someone who's been able, obviously it's taken her 20 years and she's started by herself and a cause, basically. She had the pain of a mother and a cause, a dead son, right? And over, whatever, a 27-year period, you've been able to rally a community to affect change, right? So whether that's legislative, and of course it hasn't been easy, and of course she's gone through a million trials and this, tribulations and that, and this and that, but she's got something done, right? And that's one lady.
But that doesn't stop, but that doesn't stop the Tory government from increasing stop.
It's not a Tory thing. So that's why I was sighing when he was talking.
I'm not trying to draw a governmental line in the sand here, but for everything that Baroness Doreen Lawrence has done, on the other side, there is a much powerful institution, i.e. the government, who can increase their stop and search powers, which typically exponentially target, disproportionately was the word I was looking for, young black people. What's the solution? If I take the US as an example, slavery. Hang on a second. There were no reparations, right?
Sure. Currently, there's been no.
So again, you're not even starting from a low ebb. You're literally starting from 100 laps behind.
I don't care about all of that because it doesn't matter.
But it's relevant.
It is relevant, but I don't think complaining about where we're starting from is going to help, right? Like the point that you mentioned about the government being more powerful than Dame or Baroness Lawrence is true, right? But that's against just her. But there's going to be a million people like her with institutions and people who are fighting. And my point is that these people need to kind of come together, I don't know. Like, I'm not a community organizer or anything like this. But from what I see, the other groups have particular bodies that protect their civil liberties, basically. Anti-defamation leagues, this and that. There are bodies that the communities themselves have created to protect themselves, basically. And I haven't seen that within the black community, is the point that I'm making.
Okay, man. Honorary Niger boy, wrap this one up. What do you think in a few sentences about what you've just heard that your people have caused?
That's 2 cards I get
Please
to play now.
represent them.
Yes.
But briefly.
No, but in all seriousness.
I think the organisation and the solidarity point is interesting. It's certainly interesting in the context of our last episode where we discussed this government report coming out about white kids being underprivileged because of this industry of minority organisation. It's funny that you guys Tommy doesn't think that black people organise themselves to a significant extent, and yet the government believes that it's because black people are so well organised that white kids are getting poorer.
But that's not what the report said either. The report, if you remember, said there's a cottage industry of charities supporting underprivileged children of colour. That's not the same thing.
These are the kinds of... That's the kind of solidarity and organisation that you speak of. It's just you don't think it's particularly effective. I think that the black community maybe... It's not really my place to say, but maybe could do more, though it does a lot. Could do better, although it does very well. It's not necessarily for black people to make people... It's not for black people to make white people less racist. And that's something that has to be fixed from within. That's an institutional problem.
Amen.
On a national level. 87% of this country is white. Only 13% of it is ethnic minority. It's not for the 13% to influence that 87%. Black people can do, should do what they can, but it's really got to be white people. And the thing that actually gets me in what you were saying, Tommy, is that I don't particularly like Dawn Butler and I don't particularly like Diane Abbott, but the quick fix or the fix to this is to have greater black representation in Parliament. That's something that's very easy to say, but if you look at the examples of famous black people in Parliament, in politics, you have to martyr your life.
Kemi Badenoch.
You have to what your life?
You have to martyr your life. You have to be prepared for an awful quality of life. People like David Lammy wear shit constantly. People like Diane Abbott wear shit constantly. People like Dawn Butler wear shit constantly. You can disagree with their politics.
What do you
mean? But
they
get attacked. Shit? They get attacked, and the vitriol that they wear is on a different level than almost any other MP. It's because they're high-profile black MPs that they're attacked in the sense that they are.
So when you say wear shit, you mean they get
publicly attacked and racially abused, publicly attacked. Their intellect is brought into question in a degree that's not comparable to other MPs.
Tommy thinks you were talking about their drip or something.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly how he was like using.
Someone said David Lammy's got shit crep, and he got crep checked on Tottenham High Road, and it's tough. No, but I think the organisation point is interesting, but it's not for black people to cure white people's racism.
Yeah, 100%. What were you going to say? You can finish up before we move.
No, it's all good. I think I made my point. My point is basically that we need to be better organised about it. And Johnny's...
I always struggle when it's when so matter of fact that is the one solution. And it sounds like that's what you're saying is the only solution.
Yeah, I feel like I am, because like the Johnny's point earlier is to like, on a societal level, we need to understand why someone is being racist. Cool. I think that's 100% important, but I haven't got the time to deal with that. So what I've got the time to do is to band together with 50 other men and boycott something or push a message or whatever to get the change. So we're going to talk about this later, I'm sure. The baby says 1-2 things about HIV.
Hey, Segway King.
And Boohoo drop him, right? So this is the kind of shit that goes down because Boohoo don't want a backlash from the gay community or from the HIV community.
We're going to talk about Boohoo.
And it's the same thing, right? So like if you're able to essentially create a culture of fear that corporations are essentially more mindful about what's being said societally, and we're seeing this with Nike and some large corporations. This is what's going to ultimately affect change.